A very good evening to you and welcome to the new home of Sound to Life just outside of Carnmore, where this evening we bring you the draw for the 2022-23 Bank of Ireland Connacht Junior Cup. It is one of the premier cup competitions in the country. We'll be bringing that to you shortly. We'll also be bringing you the draw for the J1C Cup, where 6 teams will be battling it out for that particular honour. If we go back through history, the Junior Cup is something that holds pride of place in the history of Connacht Rugby. First played in 1905 and won by the Jez. It was a competition that was farmed pretty much by the schools until the 1930s, when the clubs started to really get involved, and they did exactly that, with Westport winning during the 1930s. And as we go through the history of this prestigious competition, there are so many fantastic teams that have given us wonderful, wonderful entertainment and great memories for their respective clubs and for their communities. I could list any one of a dozen teams that spring to mind. We could talk about the likes of Westport, as I mentioned, of course, who won the cup in the 1930s and then came back and won it more recently. The likes of Ballinrobe, Corrib, Loughrea, Craigs, Connemara, just to name a few, who have all taken that prestigious piece of silverware that is behind me home. Well, Connemara will be looking for 3 in a row this year. In 2020, they shared the cup with Castlebar, and then won the competition last season in beating a very good Buccaneers team as well, putting up 34 points in the process. Well, can they take the cup home for a 3rd year in a row? That would put them into a very unique position and joining a very select group of clubs that have done exactly that. We'll talk about the format of the respective cups in just a minute, but before we do that, I am delighted and honoured to be joined by the president of the Connacht branch, Padraig. Moran. Padraig, you're very welcome. This is a rather special moment in the season of any club that, yearn to take a junior cup. To say you've won a junior cup is absolutely the pinnacle of many junior players' careers. I was almost going to say lives, but in some cases they might feel that way.
Absolutely. Anyone that wins the junior cup will treasure it for their whole rugby career and the rest of their life, and hold on to that medal dearly.
I think so. One thing that strikes me about the Junior Cup, and as I mentioned, going back through the history of the competition, I mentioned like when the Jez won it in 1905, but you go back to the likes of Ballinrobe, who won it in 1991, Craigs, 1993. It's hard to believe a team that are at the pinnacle of the Junior 1A League haven't won the cup in that length of time. It's bizarre almost. I mean, you look at Corrib won the cup in 94, brilliant Corrib team. Gort, Buccaneers, Corinthians, it's been 12 years since Corinthians have won a junior cup. Sligo won it in 2011, and I'm only mentioning teams who've last won it, but you have other teams that are there who would also love to upset the apple cart a little bit, shall we say. Those teams are all involved in the Junior 1A League, all feel they have a right to take it, but they still have to get through the preliminaries and the last 16 first.
Absolutely, and if you look back through history, even the likes of Gort upset the apple cart, right? You can look at any team, even ourselves when we won it back in '94, completely at odds that we wouldn't win it. And
but that was we have to remember, and we have to remind people as well about something. In 1994, you had Monavea, Craigs, Castlebar to a point, Connemara definitely, all seen as possible favourites for that particular competition, and Corrib went and just basically upskittled the apple cart, to put it mildly.
Absolutely, we were by no means favourites, but we actually worked hard on us and upset the apple cart. And I have to say, George McDonough, I always remember, said it's a sad state of affairs when the Junior Cup can be won by a crowd of part-time farmers.
Yeah, and George always yearns for Our Ladies Boys Club to continue their wonderful run. We'll see how they get on, because of course behind us we have the draw for the Junior 1C Cup. But there's so many cliches that you associate with cup competitions. The fairy tale, for example. The team that come from nowhere and upset all the odds. Ballinrobe was a great example of getting to the semi-final last season. A good run and momentum. And, I'm in the back of my mind, all of these things are running around about different sayings that I'll get given out to if I use them. But the fairy tale is always the great story. You mentioned Corrib. That was a fairy tale.
I did predict last year, very early in the season, that Ballinrobe would get to a final. And I was actually disappointed when they didn't. right? And you can always see a cup team. Some teams are very good cup teams and come through it. And Ballinrobe is a good cup team and always was. Like as you said, you go back to the time they went to the replay with OLBC, and as far as I remember, it finished up 3-0 on the day. And you've other teams, as I said, the likes of Gort, Dunmore this year would definitely have their eye on it and would love to stop Connemara getting 3 in a row. And you could never count anybody in or out.
And one thing we've seen about this season already, we've seen good performances in the league from every single team in Junior 1A. So they will feel that they're now building to this preliminary round if they're there, or if they're lucky enough to avoid it and find themselves in the last 16. Because the one thing about it is, if you avoid those preliminary round games, they can be an awful stickler. You can get unstuck very quickly. But you get to the last 16, already the momentum's behind you, the community's getting behind you, and everyone's getting behind you. And it builds up a bit of excitement as well.
That's right. Hugely, especially when it goes to that particular stage. Past the preliminary round, it gets really serious and people get dug in and dig deep. And, I've seen this down through the years with every club. And, there's a new momentum. There is a new focus, and everybody's switched on. And
you use the old line, you have to lose one to win one. Westport's a great example. I mean, they were in 3 finals in the mid-teens and won one of them. I mean, this is one of the, maybe 2 of them if my memory serves me correctly. But I mean, the point is, when you have that wonderful selection of players together, there's a bit of a pep in the step going into training as well, because there's just something the cup brings that the league doesn't.
Correct. But a cup is sudden death. That's why it has do or die.
And that's why the crowds are going to be out.
Absolutely.
And they will be out in a big way. Now, we'll talk more about the Junior Cup in a couple of minutes' time, but we're now going to bring you the draw for the Junior 1C Cup. And I'm going to just give you the format for that. There are 6 teams involved. They are Tuam, Craigs, Oughterard, Carrick-on-Shannon, Our Ladies Boys Club, and Clare Morris. And before we do the draw part, just looking at that, I mean, you have Oughterard, Carrick-on-Shannon, Our Ladies Boys Club, and Clare Morris. And teams like them would see this cup competition as just as prestigious and just as important as the Junior Cup itself. And we also noticed, and I'm seeing maybe a thread as well, in the sense that Oughterard, Carrick-on-Shannon, Clare Morris Boys Club, they're all kind of in a building phase as well. They've brought on their players, and Oughterard, Carrick and Clare Morris, great examples at underage as well. So I mean, these 4 teams will all fancy their chance in this cup competition, but of course Craigs and Tuam will want to have something about that as well.
Well, definitely, the ones that stand out to me is Oughterard and Clare Morris, and I have to say, you'd have to salute both of them with the amount of work they've done in the last few years and how they have developed. And I can see Clare Morris having a great run at this competition, and they're up and coming and they're doing huge work down there. Yeah,
and to be fair to all 4 teams, the journey isn't too bad either. No. It's not Sligo going down to Gort or anything like that. So we'll see how this one goes. Now,
and as well as actually Tuam seconds would be a very good team. Carrick-on-Shannon, as I said, very, very strong forwards. Craigs, you couldn't rule out any of them. Boys Club.
It's going to be a fun competition. The quarterfinals are fixed for the 15th of January, just to give you the date on that. And the kick-off times are subject to change, but the usual routine is 2:30 on a Sunday afternoon. Though if you do have lights, like is the case for a couple of those sides, then there might be a Saturday evening match, but more on that as time goes. But Padraig, if you would draw, because there are 4 teams, and the 6 teams are in the cup at the minute, so we will draw 2 teams that will get byes, and the first one of those that gets a bye straight into the semi-final is Carrick-on-Shannon. Carrick-on-Shannon, the first team that will get a bye into the semi-final. And then the next team to get a bye into the semi-final, and they're going to love you in Oughterard, Padraig, because it's Oughterard who are into the semi-final of the Junior 1C Cup. So we now know who they're the two teams that receive byes, so I'm going to leave them there, leave them separate. Now we're moving to the draw for the quarterfinals themselves. And the first team to get drawn out, it will be a trip to the green, because Craigs are at home. Craig seconds are at home for theirs, so I'll leave that there. And they will take on, this is going to be tasty, Tuam. Craig's taking on Tuam in the first of those quarter-finals. Oh, that is going to be absolutely beautiful. The next one up then, and it's going to be Our Ladies Boys Club. Now, I was going to say the back pitch of the sports ground. Unfortunately, with the development that's going on there at the moment, they are no longer playing at home, but it is going to be a home game for Our Ladies Boys Club, and they will be taking on, and Claremorris will be just heading up the N17 because it's in Claremorris. It's not in Claremorris, it is Claremorris who will take on Our Ladies Boys Club. So now, just to recap on our quarter-final draw. So the two teams straight into the semi-finals are Carrick-on-Shannon and Duke Derard. And then our two quarter-finals will see Craig's take on Tuam, and Our Ladies Boys Club will take on Claremorris. Now, the next part of that, we get our two teams who've received byes, who happen to be Duke Derard and Carrick-on-Shannon. I'll put them into the cup, and we will then put in the winners of A and winners of B. Now, for these purposes, A is Craig's or Tuam, and B is Our Ladies Boys Club or Claremorris. So, Padraig, if you would do the honours again. So, who is going to be at home for the semi-final? And it's going to be the winner of A. So, the winner of Craig's and Tuam, they will be at home too. The winner of B. And that is Our Ladies Boys Club or Claremorris. So, Boys Club or Claremorris, you will be heading to Craig's or Tuam for your Junior 1C Cup semi-final. Now, the second one, obviously, we know who's there. It's going to be Duke Derard, who will be at home. If Duke Derard win it, they'll be at home for the semi-final. Or Carrick-on-Shannon. So, Duke Derard will play Carrick-on-Shannon. Nice spin for Carrick, must be said. And that is our semi-final draw for the Junior 1C Cup. So let's recap one more time as regards the draw in its entirety. And we're going to, just to move over here for a second, and we'll just go through them all individually. So you've got Carrick-on-Shannon, who have got themselves a bye. Duke Derard have got themselves a bye. Then we've got Craig's or Tuam, and Our Ladies Boys Club or Claremorris. And then on to the semi-final draw, and the winner of A and B, so Craig's or Tuam will be at home to Our Ladies Boys Club or Claremorris, and Duke Derard will be at home to Carrick-on-Shannon, and that is the draw for the Connacht Junior 1C Cup for 2022-2023. Now we have that out of the way, and we're going to move these over to Cathal, because we're going to talk about the Junior Cup itself for a moment. And the Junior Cup, we'll just go back to that again, Padraig, for a second, because as somebody who was born and raised in Craig's, it always was a magic moment when they were playing in the Cup. If they were playing in the green, you saw a massive crowd there. And that's, like I said, the last time they won it was 1993, and I had to ask one of the heroes of that particular year, Sean Brandon Duff, as they call him. It's hard to believe it was that length of time, but he was telling me that, the memories of that and the guys who played in it, they're all, they're legends. Even to this day, where you see them, walking around, Frank Brandon, Barry Collins, I could think of dozens more, the Dowds, Kevin O'Rourke, of course, whose daughters are now making a big name for themselves in the boxing ring. John O'Rourke, I think, was part of that squad. Denny Monaghan. I'm rattling off names that I would remember from that era. Brian Hanley, of course, another one.
Collins.
Yeah, Shawnee Collins. These lads, this is a memory, and I'm using Craig's as an example because it's home. That's what lives with them, is that win in the cup. 6-3, they beat Connemara. And, that's not the highest scoring final of all time, but it shows how tense the games are. But I'm using that as an example. But for any one of the teams that have won in recent years, and Connemara is a great example, a fantastic sporting town. Their rugby means as much to them as anything else. Everybody wants to win the cup, but they also want that memory in here.
They want a memory, and it's also a memory. It's also, when you do that, it's a special family. And that team, right throughout their whole life, is actually, they're like a glove. They're always together. They're always in contact with each other. And they're always there to help each other. Mm-hmm. And, in fairness, that's what rugby is all about as well, the spiritual rugby. But winning a junior cup, as I said, most teams, don't have the luxury to look back at us as winning a cup, the junior cup, because it is the hardest fought competition in Connacht Rugby.
And what's noticed about the history, and I mentioned it's 117 years in existence, that it is so hard to win. You know, when a team comes out of nowhere, we mentioned Corb a little bit earlier on, that they become heroes, even if they mightn't win it, but they'll still talk about that great cup run, which stays forever. And that's also, and it's such a boost to a community as well when a team do well.
Absolutely. Sure, every player gets better as he gets older. You know,
Yeah, so I've been told.
Way past the sell-by days, you know. But it is a special time in anyone's career, in any team and club. And as you say, everybody comes out of the woodwork for regards sponsorship, support, players be back out training for cup competitions. You know,
People turning up who've never been to a game before in their lives. That's the great thing about it.
It's a new emphasis.
It really is. Well, let's talk about the format now for the Junior Cup draw. And if you on the screen to my left, you will now see the teams that are involved, and you will also see the teams that some of these teams will receive buys. But let's just go through the teams, Padraig, for a second. And we'll start the Ballina, of course, Ballinasloe. It's great to see Ballinasloe, even though you've got Buccaneers as well. But Ballinasloe involved in the Cup recently. Banrobe, Ballyhonus, Buccaneers, seconds. Castlebar, Connemara, the defending champions. Corinthians, seconds. Corb, Craigs, Dunmore, Galwegian, seconds. Loughrea, Monavea, University of Galway, Sligo, Tuam and Westport. And every single one of those teams are going to be watching us very carefully to see if they've got the buy into the last 16, which I think a lot of them are praying for, but also to avoid those last 4 boxes at the bottom, because that is a preliminary round that could spell the end of a cup run before it begins.
Correct. Everybody and many one has found the preliminary round being a pure banana skin, and you know, cut their season very short, and hopefully some clubs will avoid us.
Well, so no team wants their season to end on the 8th of January, that's for sure. Right, we'll get to the... now, just one thing I want to add before we go any further. The Junior 1A teams don't get involved in the preliminary round. They join in the last 16. So what we're going to do, first of all, we're going to draw the 6 teams that will receive buys, and of course then the 2 games that follow in the preliminary. So if we will put these into the Junior Cup itself. I should also say, by the way, it's been a long time. How are you? We move into these. When I say it's been a long time, it's been a very long time. But we move to the preliminary. So, Padraig, if you draw, so the first 6 teams we're going to draw out now are all going to receive a bye into the last 16. So, if you want to cross your fingers, now is a good time. The first team to receive a bye is Ballinasloe. Ballinasloe, first team to receive a bye into the last 16. And the second team, and they'll be very happy with me for doing this, it's Corinthians. Corinthians getting a bye into the last 16. Next up, Ballyhonus have received a bye into the last 16. Next up, it's Corb who've received a bye. Anthony Leafy will be so happy to see you draw that name out. Next up, University of Galway have received a bye. So just to make sure now, one more team gets a bye into the last 16. And the team that get the bye are Sligo. So Sligo are into the last 16. They get a bye into the last 16. So we now go to the 2 games that will be played, and they're called A and B. So, Padraig, the first team at home in the preliminary rounds will be, and they are Ballinrobe. Ballinrobe at home in the preliminary round. I'll just leave that there to keep it separate. Next up, it's Loughrea. So Loughrea heading to Ballinrobe in the preliminary round of the Junior Cup. I have a funny feeling I'm going to get some phone calls later on. And next up, it's Ballina, who are at home. And Ballina will be playing, there's one team left, and that is Galwegians.
It's a long drive.
Nice spin for Galwegians. Lovely spin for Galwegians. Brendan Guilfoyle will not be a happy camper, but they're away from home against Ballina in Heffernan Park, and that could be an absolutely phenomenal game, actually.
Absolutely,
the last. Of those just before we go into the last 16 draw and kind of drag it out a small bit more, just to mention, Ballinrobe and Loughrea will be a fascinating game, and Ballinagall Regis will be a fascinating game. So, there are two very good preliminary round games there drawn out.
Oh, it's serious. Ballinrobe, Loughrea, in fairness, they have many tough battles down through the years, and neither of them would take either of them for granted. Mm-hmm. And Regis Ballina, my God, I have to say, it's hard to call it. It is being played in Ballina, and I definitely think Ballina will have their tails up to that. Yeah,
well, it's going to be fun. Heffernan Park, of course, in Craigs Road, hosting that particular game, and Ballinrobe, I used to call it the race course. It's not there anymore. Of course, they have a new pitch now.
Absolutely.
When I say new pitch, it's probably on the go for 20 years, but I call me a traditionalist. I still call it the race course. But Ballinrobe at home to Loughrea in those. So there are two preliminary round games. So now we leave them, turn them over, because the teams that have received a bye, which are these, are going back into I'm putting the wrong cup for starters, but back into the Junior Cup draw. So here we go. We have the winners, of course, of A and B. So the winners of our two preliminary round games are here. They go in, and all our Junior 1A teams are now into the mix for the last 16 games played on the 15th of January. So a lot of teams the Junior 1A teams are now pricking their ears up, I would say, for who is going to be at home or where they're going to be traveling.
We'll have to get a food processor here to mix them all up right.
Well, you're doing a very good job so far. The first team out and at home in the last 16 is Dunmore. Dunmore will be at home. So it's the Green and Dunmore that will play host to Dunmore and... Oh, excuse me, I don't mean to, but these teams have already met, and Castlebar beat them in the league. I think it was 9-8 in the Castlebar. You're heading to Dunmore again. That would be a cracking game. Paddy Durkin is probably organising the bus right now from the Castlebar point of view.
I know, I think it's Johnny McCormick.
Oh, is it Johnny, the legend? Well, then I'll get a phone call from Johnny McCormick or a text message before too long. Anyway, he's probably going to give out to me. Monavea are at home, so... Monavea at home, of course. Hello to Johnny McCormick and all the lads in Castlebar as well, an old parish of my own. And this is a local derby for the ages. Monavea at home to Tuam. Now that's a cracker of a game, and not a long journey either for Tuam. So Declan Slattery, you know what you've got to do. The winner of B, so Ballina or Galwegians, I'll just put this up here to the screen. Ballina or Galwegians, they will be at home. And they will be at home too. Oh, we talked about Ballina and Galwegians being a good win. Ballina or Galwegians at home to Sligo. Ballina or Galwegians at home to Sligo in the last 16.
Right.
And it'll be a trip to the green for somebody because Craigs have been drawn at home and they will be playing Corinthians. So that's a game I will have to go to, no doubt. Next up is Corrib, who've been drawn at home. So Corrib at home. So who's going to Headford? Who will be heading to Headford? It is going to be the University of Galway up the road. So the University of Galway, short spin for you. You're going to Headford to take on Corrib in the last 16 of the Connacht Junior Cup. We have 3 games left to draw, and the first of them is the winner of A. So Ballinrobe or Loughrea will be at home, and they will be playing Ballinasloe. Ballinasloe will be at home to Ballinrobe or Loughrea. And we move on. The next team up are the defending champions Connemara, have been drawn at home. So the Monastery Field is going to witness Connemara and Buccaneers. Another possible classic in the process. Connemara and Buccaneers in the last 16 of the Junior Cup. And our last 2 teams, and it's Westport. So Caraholly, the venue for Westport, and Ballyhaunis. So it's an all-Mayo clash in the last 16 of the Connacht Junior Cup, sponsored by Bank of Ireland. So let's recap the draws once again, and we'll just go back over here. First of all, the preliminary round games. So let's recap the teams that have received byes. They are Ballinasloe, Corinthians seconds, Ballyhaunis, Corrib, University of Galway and Sligo seconds. And our 2 preliminary round games are Ballinrobe against Loughrea and Ballina and Galwegians. And I'm now going to move over to our draw for the last 16, and it's Dunmore at home to Castlebar. That will be tasty. I'll get Park's opinion in a second. Monavea, local derby with Tuam. The winner of Game B, so it's either Ballina or Galwegians, they will be at home to Sligo seconds. Craigs will face Corinthian seconds. Corb at home to the University of Galway. The winner of A, which is Ballinrobe or Loughrea, they will take on Ballinasloe. Connemara taking on Buccaneers in the Monastery Field, and a trip to Caraholly for Westport, who take on Ballyhaunis. Park, as president, you have to be neutral, but first of all, just Corb, fair play, home draw against the University of Galway, but there are several games there. Again, the cliches are jumping into my head, but there are several games there that could be the big games of the entire round.
Yeah, but you could start at the top there between Dunmore and Castlebar. You know, that's a light before it even starts, right? Monavea Tuam, you know, there was always good games between Monavea Tuam, Westport Sligo, right? Craigs, Corinthians, you know, that's another one. Corrub University College, you know, college definitely wouldn't like going down to Corrub. You know, Connemara Books, and Westport, Ballyhaunis. You know, there's some great clashes there.
Absolutely, it really is. Now, just to mention, the preliminary round games are on the 8th of January, and the last 16 games are a week later on the 15th. Park, just before we wrap up, we want to mention, of course, the sponsorship of Bank of Ireland, because sponsorship is so important, especially in this day and age. It is crucial that competitions like this get the support that they get, and Bank of Ireland have done an outstanding job in doing that.
Absolutely, and sponsorship is so important to the domestic game at the moment. And, you know, this competition was sponsored for years by Heineken, and I'm not exactly sure when that finished off the top of my head. But I know for years it used to be a fabulous night on a Monday night to go to a club and have the Junior Cup draw, and sponsored by Heineken. But times move on, and nothing ever stands still. And you know, a few years back, we had the draw on the sports ground where all the captains turned up with their club jersey, and the photographs was taken and it was on in the hospitality tent in the sports ground. But you know, I know in my heart and soul the competitions committee are very willing and to take any guidance from a club that wishes to come up with a better idea than having it online. But saying that, you know, last year was the first year it was done online. There was over 2,000 people tuned into it, and I think that speaks a volume in itself.
Absolutely, it was so enjoyable to do like this. I mean, it's just so much fun to do, and it's great to see the reaction of the different teams, you know, as the evening progresses, and to hear their responses. And you know, some of them are absolutely delighted, some of them are not so happy. But I mean, that's the joy of the cup. I mean, you're not going to get the team you want all the time, and I think, though, in fairness, there can't be any complaints about that. Every single one of those games, I do not see a single game that in my mind stands out as a walkover. Every one of those games are extremely tough and extremely well matched.
Well, I know I have been around the province at a lot of games for the last few years, but you know, nearly all the games I'd love to be at myself to witness it, because the atmosphere and the tension, you know, you can see it written all over them already.
No, it really is. Padraig, thank you so much for joining us here this evening. And you know, you're going to be a very busy man over the next couple of weeks. Yeah,
I have to say thank you yourself, and thank you to Galway Bay for always being so helpful, and to Connacht Rugby and to the provinces. To the clubs in the province.
Absolutely, our pleasure. You know? And just a reminder, by the way, Connacht Ulster Friday night. If you haven't got your ticket, I would get it soon, because that's going to be an incredible night. Padraig, thank you very much.
Just one thing before I go, I just wanted to thank Cathal Roddy, who's our new administrator in Connacht Rugby, and he replaced Richard Doyle, and we're delighted to have him. Not alone that because he's a Corrib man, but he's also a very good referee, and he's also a very, very capable guy. And I also have to thank John Kerr and his competitions committee. And I have to say, they don't leave many stones unturned. And John's blood pressure might get a bit high now and again, but, as I often say, his bark is worse than his bite. Thank you.
True, unless you come out the wrong side of his bark. John, thank you very much, and Cathal as well. I want to also thank the guys in Sound to Light for an outstanding job as always this evening. To Bank of Ireland, of course, who sponsored this incredible competition. Who is it going to be this year? Will Connemara make it 3 in a row, or will somebody else take them off their perch? Well, the next couple of weeks will tell us an awful lot more. Opening round games on the 8th of January, the last 16 games on the 15th. Once again, thanks to John Carr and the competitions committee, of course, overseeing this, to Cathal, and of course to Padraig Moran, Connacht branch president, for completing the draw. That's it from Sound to Light. Whatever happens over the Christmas, we hope that you have a fantastic one. And I have a funny feeling there's a few clubs' WhatsApp groups are now going a little bit mad, organising training over the Christmas period. Don't blame me. From here in Sound to Light, it's good night.